I Expect You to Die 2 is good, mostly. I think I kind of prefer the first one just because of some subtle variations in the way the levels are constructed. But all in all, you can really tell that developer and publisher Schell Games have a lot of experience in both educational games and, since 2014, VR development. Seated escape room type games tend to suit VR extremely well because it makes very good use of the intrinsic VR environment, making fiddling with wires and repairing things and putting things in the right place much more immersive than on a screen. And I Expect You to Die 1 and 2 are excellent examples of this subgenre of VR games, in which you play a spy, Agent Phoenix, doing all sorts of James Bondy things. Now, I played these both more or less back to back, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend. I suppose by the second game, I began to feel perhaps a bit fatigued at this gameplay loop, but I don't think my favouring the first game is just that. The first game felt like it was having quite a lot of fun with itself. There was a lot of silly book titles, and the levels were picking as varied and exotic locations as they could possibly think of, from the depths of the ocean to in orbit. And the story was slightly incoherent, as it was basically just an excuse to get the player into as many of these locations as possible. All the puzzles were reasonably casual in difficulty, with clues that were easy to find but perhaps a bit harder to decipher. There was very little stress in terms of time restrictions or enemy fire, but I really enjoyed the first game. The second one changes things slightly. Now, aesthetically it looks pretty much exactly the same. The art direction is really good in both games. Having exhausted their dream list of ridiculous locations, the story in the second one is a bit more considered, and the locations perhaps slightly lower key if more action-packed. The second game's taken on the voice acting talents of Will Wheaton.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
As a supervillain film star that you have to foil over the course of the game. It's more complicated than that, I'm not going to go into spoilers. But what I will say about the level construction is that Schell Games have added to the challenge by making some of the clues a bit more difficult to find, and also by making some of the deaths appear to come out of the blue. Now, the game is a bit more challenging as a result, but it also feels like the game indeed actually expects you to die now. It's very difficult to think through all the challenges without having to repeat the process multiple times, which was certainly less the case with the first game. I found myself getting a lot more frustrated with the second one. So sometimes invisible countdowns were happening that led to my untimely demise, and other times I did the kind of point-and-click adventure thing where I was just clicking things onto other things, just hoping something would happen. However, I might just not be all that bright, to be honest. But overall, I really enjoyed both. I think the pacing and difficulty of the first one is a bit more suited to me, but I can imagine this slight tweak to the design ethos might be preferred by some. So yeah, I recommend it. Thanks for watching. See you next time. It's weird what the camera does to people, isn't it? I'll see you next time. Unless I don't.